you're a sky, 'cause you're a sky full of stars. I'm gonna give you my heart. 'Cause you're a sky, 'cause you're a sky full of stars. 'Cause you light up the path.
It was the first genocide of the 20th century. The massacre in 1904 of the Over-Herero and Nama peoples by German troops in Namibia. The Second Reich seized their lands and wiped out over half the local population. In 2021, the German government publicly acknowledged the genocide.
I couldn't care less about apologies. We are demanding what was taken from us. Our cattle, our livelihoods, our land.
Watch Namibia Revisited on France 24 and France24.com.
With the Prime Minister warning France could see 250,000 new coronavirus infections per day by early January, The French government announces a wave of new COVID-19 restrictions. Meanwhile, as a surge in COVID cases in the U.S. disrupts hundreds of flights and workplaces, the Centers for Disease Control shortens isolation guidelines for asymptomatic cases. The average number of new daily infections across the country has risen to 205,000. And will it become a victim of the very repression it was founded to denounce? Russia's Supreme Court prepares to make a decision on shutting down Memorial, which is the country's most prominent human rights group. Those are our top headlines this hour. Glad to have you with us on France 24. I'm Erin Ogunkeye. First up, after France recorded 100,000 new coronavirus cases during the weekend, that's the highest number since the start of the pandemic, the government announces a raft of new restrictions. Remote working will be compulsory for companies that can do so. Public gatherings will be limited and masks again required in city centers. The Prime Minister stopped short, though, of curbing New Year's Eve celebrations. Karis Garland has the details.
According to the Prime Minister, France is in a race against time. COVID-19 is now spreading faster than ever, the weekly incidence rate rising to more than 750 people in every 100,000. To combat the rising cases and hospitalizations, Jean Castex said vaccination was still the most important tool.
Dès demain matin, suivant en cela la recommandation de la Haute Autorité de Santé, il suffira de 3 mois après votre deuxième injection, ou votre première si vous avez eu le Covid, pour pouvoir bénéficier de votre rappel.
A slew of other measures were also announced Monday. Working from home will become mandatory as of January 15 and for a period of 3 weeks. Where possible, employees must work off-site for a minimum of 3 days per week. As of next Monday, eating and drinking will be banned in cinemas, sporting venues and on transport, while customers in bars and restaurants will only be allowed to consume while seated. Large events will be restricted to 2,000 people indoors and 5,000 outdoors. Standing concerts will also be banned.
C'est dommage, j'ai l'impression que c'est un peu régressif, dans le sens, moi j'ai fait ma 3e dose aujourd'hui par exemple. J'ai l'impression d'avoir fait les 3 doses un petit peu pour rien.
Honnêtement, je pense que c'est bien de mettre une jauge. Après, est-ce que ce sera vraiment efficace en sachant que dans les événements comme ça, on est quand même relativement serré?
About 90% of eligible people have had at least one vaccine dose, but to raise that figure even more, the government plans to replace what's known as the health pass with a vaccine pass, meaning to enter most public places, people would need to show proof of vaccination, not just a negative test. Before it can come into effect, the bill needs to be approved in Parliament.
Well, there are new rules in the United States as well. This time, though, to limit disruptions to workplaces and the economy as infections surge. The Centers for Disease Control shortened isolation period guidelines for asymptomatic cases from 10 to 5 days. Now, this came as hundreds of flights were scrapped because of lack of staff due to coronavirus infections. Yuka Roye has more.
COVID travel woes have returned to airports. With the Omicron variant spreading rapidly even among airline staff, thousands of flights have been cancelled and delayed in the United States alone. At Seattle Airport, passengers found themselves stranded over the Christmas weekend and beyond.
We had to wait for 2 hours outside in 20-degree weather for a taxi that would be willing to take us to one of the only hotels with room availability. And this morning, we got another Uber driver to bring us back to the airport.
The worsening airline staff shortages have prompted Anthony Fauci, the US government's top infectious disease expert, to suggest that a vaccine mandate could be considered for domestic flights. At the same time, health officials are scrambling to come up with ways to minimize the impact on business and movement. The CDC has shortened its recommended isolation time for people who have tested positive from 10 days to 5 days if they don't have symptoms and continue to wear a mask for 5 more days. It also says people who have received a booster shot of a COVID vaccine or are within 6 months of receiving their second dose don't have to quarantine even if they have been exposed to the virus. The CDC says the change is motivated by science, based on what they know so far about the Omicron variant. For international travelers entering the United States, tight restrictions remain in place, including a requirement for a negative COVID test result less than 24 hours old.
Turning to Russia now, where the Supreme Court is expected to rule on disbanding the renowned human rights group Memorial. Prosecutors accused the organization of breaching a law requiring it to declare itself as a foreign agent in all of its publications and also to undergo financial audits. Well, in what many say is similar to Stalin-era laws, the so-called foreign agent legislation labels organizations that obtain foreign funds as acting against Russia's interests. Well, Tuesday's ruling will come a day after a court in northwestern Russia increased the prison term for the head of the local memorial office. Yuri Dmitriev will now have to serve 15 instead of 13 years in prison. His supporters say that that's punishment for his work locating and exhuming mass graves of people killed under Joseph Stalin's rule. Luke Shrego tells us more about him.
A decade and a half of prison time for Yuri Dmitriev. The prominent Russian historian has seen his sentence repeatedly increased on charges of sexually abusing his adopted daughter, seen here on the left. However, Dmitriev's supporters say it's the result of his work with the Memorial Human Rights Group in exposing abuses under Joseph Stalin, specifically mass graves containing the bodies of thousands who died in the gulags, the network of Soviet-era prison camps. Dmitriev denies the charges. Relating to nude photos of his daughter he says he took to monitor her growth, and which date back to 2016. Acquitted 2 years later, a higher court then overturned the ruling and put him back on trial. He was sentenced to 3.5 years in July last year and due to be released in November on time served. However, prosecutors asked for a stricter sentence, something they granted that September with an extra 13 years in a high-security penal colony, increased on Monday to 15. Memorial itself is in dire legal straits too. Moscow prosecutors are demanding it be shut down for breaching its designation as a foreign agent, a status required of groups in Russia that receive foreign funding.
Well, staying in the region, the United States and Russia will hold security talks on January 10th to confront those tensions over Ukraine. A meeting between the Kremlin and NATO, as well as broader regional negotiations with several other European countries, will likely follow. After international outrage at its troop buildup along the Ukrainian border, Russia has put forth a series of demands to be discussed, including a promise that NATO will give up any military activity in Eastern Europe or Ukraine. Poland has caved to pressure from the European Union and the United States, the Polish president vetoing a media ownership law that critics say was aimed at silencing a U.S.-owned news channel. Well, more generally, that legislation would have prevented companies from outside the European Economic Area from holding controlling stakes in Polish media companies. Luke Shrego explains.
Odmawiam podpisania nowelizacji ustawy o radiofonii i telewizji.
A veto no one expected from the Polish president, as Andrzej Duda blocks the passage of a controversial law over control of the media. Critics had called it an attempt to silence opposition, though it was rushed through parliament earlier in December. It had been a project of Poland's right-wing nationalist government of the same Law and Justice party that elected Duda as an ally. However, while saying he agreed with it in principle, the Polish head of state asserted it would have threatened existing accords over international investment.
A zawarliśmy umowę, to trzeba tej umowy dotrzymać. Jeżeli my nie będziemy dotrzymywali umów, to inni z nami umów też nie będą dotrzymywali.
Duda was referring to a US-Polish agreement signed in 1990 over commercial and economic relations. Indeed, Washington had urged him to use his veto, not just against that backdrop, but one of fierce domestic opposition to the law, with demonstrators turning out to defend against what they saw as an attack on freedom of expression. The text would have prevented companies based outside the European Economic Area from holding a controlling stake in Polish media firms, something widely seen as targeting the independent news channel TVN24, owned by US parent firm Discovery, and considered critical of the government. The Law and Justice Party already controls public television and swathes of Poland's regional press. Following its election in 2015, the party has overseen Poland's plunge at the World Press Freedom Index by 46 places to 64th.
In Brazil, the death toll from heavy rain and flooding in the northeastern state of Bahia has risen to 20. The rainfall has also displaced nearly 63,000 people, according to local authorities, who've described the event as the biggest disaster in Bahia's history. Moving on now, the U.S. State Department says Washington is prepared to act against those who obstruct Somalia's path to peace. The tweet from the department's Africa Bureau came after the Somali president suspended the country's prime minister for suspected corruption. Critics, however, have denounced an attempted coup, as Ron Burster reports.
Hours after his suspension, Somalian Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein Roble denounced a deliberate coup attempt by the president and called on the military to remain loyal to him.
waxaan farayaa dhammaan ciidamada qalabka sida in ay si toos ah uga amar qaataan xukuumadda xafiiska ra'iisul wasaaraha.
It was the latest escalation in an ongoing dispute between Somalia's two most powerful figures. President Mohamed Abdullahi had already suspended his prime minister in September, and while the two men looked to have buried the hatchet a month later as they issued a joint call for elections to move ahead, the peace didn't last for long. A fresh row erupted on Saturday after the president called Roble incompetent and withdrew his mandate to organize the elections. The prime minister then accused the president of sabotaging the electoral process and was suspended a day later. In the capital, Mogadishu, residents worried over a rivalry that threatens to further derail a long-awaited presidential poll.
xilliga kala guurka ku imaada marka waxa ka codsanayna madaxda dalka ugu sareysa iyo nidaamka dawliga in lagu soo celiyo.
10 months after the end of Mohamed Abdullahi's mandate, Somalia's regional leaders still haven't been able to agree on a date for the next elections, and the latest political row is unlikely to help the country move out of this electoral limbo.
Prepare to boycott Tesla. That's just one of millions of Chinese social media posts criticizing Elon Musk in recent days. The myriad critical social media posts came after Beijing said its space station was forced to take, quote, preventative collusion avoidance control to avoid hitting Musk's SpaceX satellites. While on two different occasions, the satellites moved into orbits that prompted the Chinese space station operators to change course in order to ensure the safety of its astronauts. Well, that is all for this edition. Thank you for tuning in to France 24.
This trick been haunting me for 2 years. I can't believe how much bad luck I have with one trick. Rijksel is just a small town in the south of the Netherlands, and yeah, I grew up here and basically lived all my life here. I started riding in like 2008 or 2009, and yeah, I bought my first bike at the local BMX shop, which I was lucky enough to have one in Rijksel. And yeah, I went to the local trails and rode there every day basically.
Tom die begon met fietsen en die keek anders als anderen. Dus die keek meteen hoe hard die gingen, hoe hoog die gingen, hoe hard aan het stuur trokken. Vragen hoe het ging. Niet te veel, want hij is nogal verlegen, zal ik maar even zeggen. Tom wou alles meteen perfect doen. En dat lukte hem omdat hij alles van tevoren al in zijn hoofd had. Nou ja, Tom kwam hier binnen eigenlijk als paardrijdende, voetballende keeper. En ging naar buiten als BMX'er. Dat Tom ook uit de aanraking komt, is natuurlijk geweldig voor ons. Want we hebben een opvolger, zal ik maar zeggen. Tom had meteen al de goede stijl. En hij heeft echt talent. Hij is altijd aardig. En ja, het is gewoon altijd fijn om hem hier te hebben. Ja, Tom is gewoon iemand die niet lult, maar die laat gewoon zien wat hij kan. En dan moet de rest maar beslissen wat ze er zelf van vinden. Maar ja, meestal zijn ze wel stil als ze Tom zien rijden.
Since 2019, I got invited to a lot of contests, and at the first contest of the year, I tried a 360 quad down whip for the first time, and unfortunately slipped my foot 2 times, so it didn't count. Next contest, tried it again slipped the foot. 2020 started, COVID hit, so all the contests and events got cancelled, so there was no setup to try it on again. Even my local skate park closed, so yeah, I was stuck riding small skate parks in the area.
Lekker gauw, grappig. Best wel chill dat je gewoon voor het trucje op je bek gaat.
Ik zie Tom als rijder als een gast die veel plezier heeft in het fietsen. Hij laat het goed uitzien en hij kan ook de grootste tricks gooien. Er is weinig shit talk, weet je wel. Het is gewoon goede vibes en je kunt gewoon lekker fietsen met hem. Daar gaat het eigenlijk om.
When COVID hit, I started working at Area 51 skate park for rebuilding. And yeah, still I had that 360 quad down whip in the back of my head. And one day I came home from work and I thought, like, why not build a setup in my backyard to give it another go? I started talking to Roy from Monster Energy, and yeah, he loved the idea straight away and said, like, let's make it happen. I got in touch with Pim from Area 51 skate park, and we were thinking of the perfect setup, and I knew at the contest there was a good jump to try it on, so we pretty much duplicated that jump.
Dit is de plek. Hier komt een mooie schans staan. Daarachter in het veld een landing. En dan rijden we straks vanaf daar aan. En dan gaan we kijken of we volle bak dat ding trucje kunnen proberen.
the condition.
Ik denk dat we het beste nu ermee kunnen kappen. Daar hou ik mezelf heel. Maar het scheelt wel op de dag zelf, hoef je het allemaal maar 1 keer te doen. Of
Ja,
al...
ja. Ik zou wel echt beginnen met quad down.
Ja, ik denk dat ik dat ook doe.
Want dan heb je het gehad.
Ik denk hetzelfde als we al vandaag deden. Een paar aantal 360 dingen.
Ja.
Maar niet zo gewoon 3 no-hander
precies.
en 3 lookback. Een paar dubbel, een paar triple en dan gewoon doen.
Ik ben fucking zenuwachtig. Ik kom net terug van vakantie, ik was helemaal zen. Maar als je deze fucking setup ziet in zijn achtertuin, het is echt niet normaal.
Ja, het was in het begin best heftig om te zien, aangezien hij maakt een beetje een snurkend geluid, moeilijk ademhalen, dus het ambulance gebeld. En terwijl de ambulance onderweg was, is hij wel weer bijgekomen, maar wist je eigenlijk niet zo goed wat er gebeurd was of wat hij aan het doen was. Hij wist alleen dat hij last had van zijn schouder. Heel akelig, ja. Ja, de tranen stonden in mijn ogen, maar nu weer eigenlijk, een beetje. Maar ja. Het is mijn broertje. Het begon 2 keer mij, bij wijze van. Maar ja, dat wil niet zeggen dat je er heel zuinig op bent of wilt zijn. Dat zo zeggen.
I catched it and I immediately felt like, man, I got too much time left. I didn't have the same speed every time, so I went too fast on the triple. Landed flat on my shoulder, broke my collarbone and knocked myself out. For the next attempt, we're gonna build a roll-in instead of a winch, so the speed's gonna be consistent, so it can be more focused on the trick instead of getting the right speed. Yeah, this time around I felt super confident. I rode the setup the whole week, like did a few quad down whips on the airbag, like got it pretty dialed, did like a lot of tricks on the real landing. So like basically the setup is perfect. Yeah, I had a lot of confidence going into it this time.
Ik denk dat als jij hier Ja, ik had zelfs, hoe ik hem inzette, zeg maar, moest ik hem een beetje tegenhouden, zeg maar. Maar ik heb het idee dat deze toch net iets verder is. Dus ik ga dieper land, dan land ik daar precies bovenin. Ja, ja, dankjewel. Het zit zo erg in mijn hoofd, want ik wil het gewoon doen. Dat is echt...
Nee, maar je moet gewoon chillen, dat komt wel goed.
Ja?
Ja joh, tuurlijk. Ja, joh.
Net zo zuur, hè?
Ja.
Oh man, het is zo stom, hè? Want het lukt gewoon op de airbag. En dan weg met die ene doordat ik weggleed.
I knew I could do it. Like, this trick been haunting me for 2 years. I can't believe how much bad luck I have with one trick.
Ja, die triple was zo perfect. Ik had er zoveel vertrouwen in daarna. Toen dacht ik echt van ja, nu moet het gewoon goed komen. Ja. Toen ik hem inzette, dacht ik eigenlijk van oké, ik vang hem in ieder geval. En volgens mij ik had niet echt het idee dat ik echt zou crashen. Ik dacht echt van oké, volgens mij heb ik hem. En, want hij ging eigenlijk voor mijn gevoel best wel goed. Alleen net iets te ver uitgekomen, net iets te hard. En naderhand, je baalt je gewoon kapot. Gewoon, ik kan er eigenlijk niks anders van zeggen. Gewoon, je wil het afmaken, je wil het eigenlijk meteen verbeteren. Maar dat kon niet, omdat ik te hard in mijn kop viel, helaas. Maar daarom ben ik blij dat we nog een kans hebben en gaan we het nu goed doen.
Gaan we op 4 op de airbag. Dat was best aardig mogelijk.
The stoke was so high, especially working on a trick for so long and being this close every time. Yeah, it's such an unbelievable relief after landing it, like achieving it finally.
Right.
The show is at 3:30. Ok. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao ragazzi, I'm Paula Soares. We are here at the Je Vista backstage and we're gonna... Hey Sarah, how are you?
I'm good. I've been
see you all day.
Yeah.
Is it my first show? No, I've done it, I don't know, like maybe 5 times? Yeah.
Yes, my first show for Dolce & Gabbana, it was in Venice. This season also was amazing, really beautiful. And yeah, that's it, my second show. I'm very happy.
What is your outfit?
Okay.
Show your outfit.
Okay, so my outfit is this huge blazer.
This fashion week I'm doing and Dolce & Gabbana.
I have some really good friends here. Paula Soares, my friend, my baby, Mavi also. It's very nice to be with friends or people that we know already in the backstage.
Like like it's not the. I feel like it's not gonna be the classic Dolce & Gabbana eyeliner and red lipstick. They're doing something different this time.
So too, because girls have like different eyeshadows and stuff. It's my third time doing Dolce & Gabbana show.
Yeah, this is my first time working with Dolce & Gabbana, but I'm very excited.
Ieri sera sono uscita perché Milano Fashion Week si accende, volevo vedere un po' la situazione.
I am not a party person, but I will watch my Netflix.
I just went to bed. I was so tired.
From Serbia. I think I'm gonna go back home, do some exhibition because I'm also doing intuitive drawings, kind of like a diary of my life.
Yeah, I'm still in gymnasium. I have 1.5 years left, so I have to go back to school on Monday.
So I'm really happy and I'm excited to the show. I think like modeling is a big part of, it's a big inspiration. It's a big part of myself. So yeah, it includes a lot of that. Yeah.
My first show, it was in 2018, and it was my first show ever, like as a model.
Yeah.
Which was amazing because it was with Dolce.
I think I will meet my friend, and did you know they have the Dolce & Gabbana restaurant? Maybe I will go there. They have the Milanish, it's like the fried steak. Do you know that? You're Italian or not?
I'm gonna be wearing a low-waist skirt.
Hi, lovely. Hi. Can I take you into makeup now, please?
Yeah, sure.
Come on in.
Yeah.
I've got a perfect makeup system for you.
Cool. Let's go.
Move it. Go, go.
I'm Karime Lopez, chef from the Guchosteria. And today we're going to show you what we love to cook for us. Welcome. Hello everyone, so today we're going to show you a recipe that reminds me a lot to my childhood. And we have one of our members of the Guchosteria team that is from Spain. So I want to introduce you Paula Requena, that she's going to show us how to do the churros. Bene, enséñanos, ¿qué vamos a hacer hoy con los churros? ¿Qué vamos a hacer primero?
Primero vamos a hacer la pasta de churros, que sería un impasto. Y después seguiremos con una ganache y después seguiremos con una crema de plátano.
Ok, entonces, el impasto usas harina.
Sí, harina. Primero vamos a hervir la leche, agua.
Ok.
Leche, nata, agua.
Entonces esto es
leche y nata.
Leche y nata.
Ahora
esto
agua.
Es agua.
Le añadiremos sal y azúcar.
Todo junto ahora.
Todo junto.
Ok.
Y la mantequilla.
Todo junto.
Sí.
Okay.
Y por último pondremos para aromatizar, no es obligatorio, se podría aromatizar aunque de otro aroma, la vainilla.
Okay.
En este caso le vamos a poner media vaina de vainilla, solo las semillas. Ya estaría. Esto lo tenemos que hacer hervir y listo. Una vez hierva, le añadiremos la harina con el fuego apagado.
Ok.
Y por último, los huevos.
Ok, ahora hacemos eso.
Exacto.
Ok, entonces esto está hirviendo.
Sí, una vez hervido, le apagamos, le añadimos la harina.
Ok.
A ver. Obvio, si quieres. Hasta que esté la harina integrada. Una vez esté integrada, la encendemos un poquito más para que se vaya al gusto. Sí, para que se vaya al gusto de harina cruda.
Ok.
Sí, justo un poquito más y estaría listo.
Tipo así, ¿no?
Sí. Es una masa fácil de hacer y es como un motivo de juntarte con amigos o con la familia.
¿Y ustedes los hacen rellenos? Porque en México
Sí,
los
también.
rellenamos de todo.
Sí, pero más, o sea, son más como unos vacíos, pero también se rellenan de chocolate o chocolate blanco, en plan pistache.
Entonces, tenemos nuestra masa aquí.
¿Sí?
Y después le vamos a poner los huevos.
Exacto, de uno en uno.
Uno a uno.
Sí.
Ok, me pasas un huevito. Entonces, ¿así ya está bien?
Sí, así está bien. Ahora la dejaremos reposar en la nevera tapadita una hora, hora y media para que se enfríe y coja cuerpo y después ya...
Ahora vamos a hacer...
Una ganache de chocolate.
Ajá.
La que comemos siempre nosotros cuando comemos los churros, pero versionado. De normal lo comemos chocolate con leche.
Sí, en
o
España,
sí,
chocolate con leche. En nuestro staff meal, chocolate, la ganache de chocolate.
Y nada, entonces tenemos que calentar la nata.
Enciendo.
Calentamos la nata y añadimos la glucosa, que si en casa no tenéis glucosa, podemos ponerle mantequilla, no pasaría nada.
Mantequilla,
Sí.
¿la misma cantidad?
La misma cantidad, sí.
Ok. Entonces la glucosa la echo acá.
Exacto, que caliente un poco justo para derretir el chocolate, no tiene que ni llegar a ebullición.
Ok.
Yo pongo el chocolate aquí.
Entonces yo ya la veo un poco caliente, antes de que empiece a hervir, y te la agrego acá.
Exacto, y se tiene que derretir el chocolate.
Ok. Poco a poco, ¿no?
Sí. Deja un poquito aquí con el chocolate, que se funda. Súper. Esta cuando ya la unamos.
¿Puedo?
Sí, claro.
Me hace ilusión hacer tu ganache.
Ya la dejamos reposar por unas 3 horas para que coja consistencia.
Ok.
Y ya está, listo. La filmamos a piel, porque
Ajá.
si no se crea como la típica costrita. Y
Ajá.
listo. Incluso así caliente también está súper rica, porque ahora
Uy.
mojas el churro y es súper.
Entonces se puede usar caliente
O
y
fría. Exacto. Depende de cómo
Fría
quieras
es
decorarlo.
más durita y así
Exacto.
para mojar.
Si quieres mojar lo que decíamos antes, relleno o cubiertos de chocolate, pues así. Sería
Me encanta.
Sí.
Ok.
Súper rico.
Perfecto, ¿no?
Sí.
Está así perfecto. Bueno, en realidad, tú sabes que me encanta el banana split.
Sí.
Con churros. Un poco extremo. Entonces, tú me hiciste esta receta para mezclar banana
Exacto.
split con
Churros,
churros.
exacto.
Entonces vamos a hacer la parte de la banana para hacer nuestra receta.
Justo. Entonces vas a utilizar azúcar moscovado.
Sí.
Sirve moreno, blanco, como quieran. Pero este a mí me gusta más porque es como un saborcito así a regaliz. Un poquito de agua para diluirlo. Un aromatizante, yo he puesto canela, pero puede ser cardamomo, nuez moscada, lo que
Canela,
quieran.
canela.
Y un poquito de mantequilla, solo un poquito. Entonces vamos a empezar con el azúcar. Después ponemos los plátanos, el aromatizante.
Picadito los plátanos.
Exacto, a trocitos, chiqui, 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 chiqui. Después, si vemos que está un poco espeso, le añadimos el agua, porque como sabes, el plátano absorbe todo el liquidito y se queda como un súper duro. Entonces, si quieres, empiezas tú con el azúcar y mientras tanto yo pruebo las bananas.
Yay.
Ok, entonces
Tú
pones...
cortas el plátano,
Exacto.
yo echo el azúcar aquí.
Súper.
Como que se va ya derritiendo un
Exacto.
caramelito.
Sí. Le pones después la mantequilla, la canela. Partimos la canela porque así tenemos el aroma.
Ok. Me espero, ¿no? Echar la mantequilla, ok.
No, es que se derrita un poco y le añadimos antes también Sí.
Ok.
Y ya al mismo tiempo te voy a dar también las bananas, ¿sabes? Porque así ya... El olor de azúcar con mantequilla a mí me encanta.
Yo todo con mantequilla, qué felicidad. Le echo la canelita esta,
Sí.
¿no?
Sí, así que coja aroma.
Ok.
Súper. Y le añadimos las bananas.
Ok.
Qué rico.
Y ahí que se cocinen un poco,
Sí, que
¿no?
se cocinen y ya está. Si vemos que, por ejemplo, es muy duro el caramelo o cualquier cosa, pues le añadimos el agua, pero si no, más tarde.
Bueno, ya se siente
Sí, estupenda, sí.
la canela, el azúcar.
Así que está
Buenísimo.
pochadito y basta.
Puchadito.
Puchadito.
Ok.
Listo,
Y
así
este
estaría.
está listo.
Estaría listo. Si
Esta es
no
la
les
que- la
gustan,
cosita
si
que
a mí me
metes.
gustan la consistencia así, pero si no le gustan lo puede triturar o...
A mí me gusta así, que se sienta
Sí,
un pedazo
exacto.
de banana.
Justo.
Ok.
Súper.
Entonces, ya tenemos la masa de los churros en la manga pastelera y ahora vas a hacer la forma.
Exacto.
¿Cómo?
Pues esta vez vamos a hacerlos larguitos, así.
Como eclair.
Sí, pero podemos hacerlos como queramos, o sea, en forma de lazo, en forma de círculo, lo típico que se estira y el otro corta. Yo le puse esta boquilla porque me gusta, rizadita. Pues puedo poner lisa. Sí.
Estrellita.
Así que lo estiramos. La masa tiene que estar fría, es muy
Ajá.
importante porque si no, no se estira.
La dejaste reposar
Sí.
hasta que esté fría,
Exacto.
como una hora.
Sí, tiene que estar
A
fría.
ver. Ok.
¿Sí? Entonces, el grosor tiene que ser como uno quiera, pero nosotros no lo vamos a hacer muy grosso, muy güero. Muy grosso. Estiramos. Rompemos. Ahora te voy a dejar a ti para que pruebes.
Ok.
Así sería la forma que a mí me gustaría, pero puede
Ok.
ser también más
Más
gruesa, ¿no?
larga.
Sí, o más larga. Sí, vamos a hacerlo más
Se
larga.
hace
dale.
una larguita.
Súper largo, ¿no?
Sí, así.
Ok, venga, sigo yo.
A ver, hazte uno más gordito. Gordito y largo. También puedes hacer tipo forma como de choux, ¿no? Así unas pelotitas de churro.
Sí, sí.
A ver, hazte una si nos la comemos al ratito. Ok. Uy, ese ya...
¿No? Sería bien.
Con el heladito y toda la historia, qué rico.
¿Así?
Ok.
Podemos hacer la forma que queramos.
Ok.
Eso es lo divertido.
Y ahora la pregunta del millón. ¿Esto lo congelas?
Sí.
¿O lo enfrías o qué le haces?
Lo ideal sería congelarlo porque así conservaría la forma.
Ok.
Si la forma nos diera igual, podríamos del mismo modo, así,
Porque
cortamos.
también puedes hacer que tienes la masa y la metes directo en la freidora.
Exacto, y el otro corta, que sería lo tradicional.
Ok.
Pero para conservar la masa sería mejor congelarlo.
Ok, perfecto. Entonces, ahora esta la vamos a congelar.
Exacto.
Perfecto. Bueno, ya tenemos todo para nuestros churros banana split.
Justo.
La banana, ¿puedo, no?
Sí, sí.
La metemos abajo, ¿no?
Sí.
Haciéndole como para que se quede
Sí.
ahí.
Sí.
Luego pongo mi churrito.
Encima. Súper.
Y después un poco de chocolate.
Qué rico.
Ya, se me hace agua la boca, no puedo más. Y después hiciste estas avellanas, ¿no?
Sí, las tosté solo para que se le soltara la piel. Entonces yo pinté un poquito la piel. Le puse un poquito de
Y lo ponemos acá. Bueno, también la gente que sea un poco más así golosa, le pueden, en vez de hacer la ganache esta, puede hacer con Nutella, ¿no?
Justo.
Y esto ya para cerrar el círculo de mi mente gorda, un heladito, ¿no?
Justo. Le podemos poner también un heladito.
Un
¿De
heladito.
qué le pondríamos? A ver.
Pues para que sea la banana split de vainilla.
Ay, qué rico.
¿No?
Sí.
Heladito de vainilla.
Además va con nuestro
Qué
sabor
bonito
Jade.
el tuyo, me encanta. Paula, llegó la hora, no puedo más.
Ok.
Me lo voy a comer.
Entonces vamos a probarlo juntas.
Ok.
¿Ok? Dale.
Bueno, arranco un pedacito, ¿eh?
Sí.
Casi sin cuchara, nada. No me das cuchara.
No, así es.
Me muero. Buenísimo. Gracias, Paula.
A ti.
What does the Drakensberg mean to me? Well, in a word, it's widescreen. It's a cinematic landscape. It stretches from horizon to horizon. It's just huge. The mountains here are very distinctive. Their jagged peaks just pierce the horizon, and instantly you know you're in the Drakensberg because no other mountains in the world look like this. Everywhere you look, there's a great shot. The plant and animal life is amazing. I've just been stunned by the variety of birds, and there's such a sense of tranquility. It's just beautiful. The landscape seems untouched, but you look and there's rock art everywhere. It really makes me feel connected to the people who have lived here thousands and thousands of years before. But I think it's those wide open skies of the Drakensberg that will stay with me. That's what I'm going to remember.
Let me find it. Let me watch it real quick. It's really good. I love it. The ad was polarizing, and it did end up getting banned. Stations would not run the ad because it was, so shocking for people.
There was tension for the company to be doing this gaming thing because it was really different than really the image that the company was trying to cultivate. Some of the stuff like that, commercial, I don't think senior leadership saw until it was done.
We don't talk about Microsoft Xbox. We just talk about Xbox. Because Microsoft was good on the funding side, but bad on the branding side.
And if they wanted to go market it like they market Windows and they market Office, it was a deal breaker. It was not going to be successful.
The games industry did not speak the same language as Microsoft.
But if we were going to do this really hard thing and not lose billions and billions of dollars forever, we had to get it right.
People had to have the belief that they were working with the Xbox team. And if that meant there was something slightly unconventional that had to be done, the Microsoft bureaucracy wasn't going to get in the way.
There's a new contender in the video game wars.
Xbox is going to be the future.
Truly the future of video games.
Xbox.
Taking over the living room.
Limitless, connected digital entertainment.
You guys never understood. The company is going to face fierce competition.
Sniper! It's a ticking time bomb.
Makes me very nervous to actually play this for you.
Xbox getting a major overhaul.
A bold vision for the future of gaming.
The Xbox is a breakthrough game console that ships in fall 2001.
Most console companies start working on the next console as soon as they finish the current console. So 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So for Microsoft to go from announcing in 2000 to being on store shelves in the fall of 2001 is kind of insane.
Before Xbox landed on store shelves, the team had to run a gauntlet of very public deadlines. A hardware rollout in Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show. A first glimpse of Xbox games at Microsoft's GameStock event in Seattle. And finally, an event that brought the entire global gaming industry together to see what was new and judge it mercilessly.
E3 is the biggest moment of the year for games. For new entrants, it was really important to show up and make a good impression.
That E3 was critical for the Xbox, but a lot of what you're showing is beta software and beta hardware.
Hardware that's not proven yet, or probably not even finished.
A lot of things at E3 can go wrong.
Adding pressure, the lead executive on Xbox development, Rick Thompson, had just left Microsoft, which meant Microsoft's mission to quickly deliver an industry-changing game console needed a new leader.
The idea of finding somebody else externally didn't make sense. We had a schedule that is crazy to begin with. The project just didn't have the time for that. Nor did we think that somebody externally could sort of fit into Microsoft and make this happen. And so I concluded that it was something I needed to do.
A new challenger enters.
Sort of a fateful decision because it led to the worst 18 months of my professional career.
It's a hard project. I mean, what we were doing is something that is intensely difficult.
Robbie was the grown-up. What's Robbie's role?
We were a young group of kind of ragtag kids.
Let's go ahead and take the cars, give them 3... What the hell's that? I got a demo to do up here. I don't think Robbie should be seeing this.
What we needed more than anything else was we needed an adult in the room.
I was part of Office when it was smaller, and then as it grew big. Robbie also has a sense of propriety, and I don't think we had a sense of propriety at all. The opportunity here way outpaces that opportunity. I think it's very exciting.
He was the one inside of Microsoft that Bill Gates trusted with all the complexity and the cost and the risk involved in doing something like this.
Robbie's a good guy. People can trust him. Doesn't break his word. However, everyone who comes into games can't be prepared for what it's like because it's an entertainment business. The software doesn't just have to work and have the right features. It has to entertain also. This is hard.
I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't play games. The business model I barely understood.
We are launching an entirely new business competing against 2 established competitors in one of the largest entertainment industries in the world.
I was learning something new every single day. And that meant, obviously, I failed most days too.
And I think the next 6 to 8 weeks are going to be super exciting. A little challenging.
I didn't think about how to plan for going from 20 people to 2,000 people.
We went from 4 people to a dozen people to hundreds to, honestly, thousands involved in some way with the creation of Xbox.
It was crazy. I mean, it was no time at all before I didn't know everybody in the organization anymore.
When I think about it today, it just makes my head kind of spin sideways.
Every week, I would hear about somebody I knew in the game industry that was moving up to Redmond to work for the Xbox.
We just said, this all has to get done. We need bodies. So we hired people in bulk. We brought in teams of people.
I remember thinking, this is a lot of people changing their lives for this effort. It's either got to be something that everybody believes in, and they're willing to uproot their families and get behind this initiative, or it's going to be one of the biggest cluster of all time.
It became clear that we needed our own place because we were just going to bust at the seams.
So Microsoft has this beautiful campus and all these beautiful buildings and everyone works together. We were not part of that.
We went to this campus called Millennium, which was still in Redmond, but pretty far away from Microsoft.
Part of that was we needed space, but part of it is like, we need a few miles away from main campus to get some breathing room to do something different.
We were deliberately a renegade team.
They were rebels inside of the Microsoft empire.
We were kids in our early 20s who loved video games and could not believe that Microsoft had given us jobs to go create them, and we were all kind of growing up together.
The thing about games is it's Hollywood for nerds. You have your star directors, you have your Ferrari driving rendering engineers.
Congratulations.
And after a full day of working on making games, we would get together and play games. And there was a little bit of a weird culture of not leaving, which I think was maybe not the healthiest.
Maybe like a college dorm room kind of vibe.
Your social circle was Xbox, your family was kind of Xbox.
But we all had a common purpose, a passion around games.
Being able to do something very different and revolutionary was where we were getting our energy from.
Because we were still young, we had moments where we were like, wait a minute, like, am I the best person to be doing this?
It was definitely a whole bunch of kids making decisions above their pay grade.
You had a bunch of passionate people who weren't necessarily 100% the most qualified people to be doing the jobs, running as fast as they can to make this thing happen.
We were young and we were naive.
You know, I always call it the best funded startup ever.
Me, in my 20s, you know, I had millions of dollars of budget, and there wasn't really any oversight. It was a little bit of the Wild West.
You know, I had to negotiate all the components that went in, hard drives, power supplies, the circuit board. Here I am, this kid, negotiating these deals that are hundreds of millions of dollars.
There were definitely some terrible decisions being made. But on the other hand, that level of freedom, you know, made Xbox happen.
What resulted was sort of a weird combination of craziness and genius.
My recollection of that time was being so fascinated by watching this big company around us try to wrap its brain around what it meant to be an entertainment brand.
We didn't have a lot of interdependencies with the rest of the company.
It was Robbie, right, that had to go over to main campus and deal with Microsoft people.
One day, some executives came to visit the studio, and one of those people who came was Bill Gates. I showed him my cinematic tools and how I wrote scripts and how I laid down cameras in the engine. Bill spent time with Marty O'Donnell, our audio director.
Chief, whatever you're gonna do, make it quick.
Raining aliens! Oh, Jesus, why you do this to me?
The hopes of all the Covenant rest on your shoulders, Chieftain.
He spent time actually watching Marty play some of the themes from Halo.
Dietat. Diepat.
He went to go see our art department where one of our 3D artists was sculpting a character in clay, making a maquette. And at the end of the Bill visit, we got in the conference room, the leads of the studio, and there was a pause. And you can see the magnificent machine that is his brain calculating down the Microsoft org chart from him at the top all the way down to the crazy artists in this studio in a gravel pit, literally. And Bill leaned forward and he said, "So there are artists who work here?" It really was a cultural change for the company.
Xbox was already forcing people within Microsoft to think differently. But what really mattered was changing public perception. Behind the scenes, software engineers were hard at work building Xbox's capabilities. Now, the hardware team had a chance to win over the doubters on a big stage at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas.
CES was a trade show where companies from around the world would come to unveil the latest in technologies.
A lot of buying decisions in retailers got made at that show for the holiday season, and so we had a lot of proving to do. The press was skeptical, gamers were skeptical. You don't know how to do this stuff. You've never done this before. Good luck. The gaming industry is not a believer.
While Microsoft works on the insides of the new Xbox, it focuses an equal amount of attention on the outside.
I was the creative director of Xbox.
Horace Luke is the man. Horace Luke is the man.
What Horace had to do was take the thing that we had produced in hardware and then figure out some wrapping around it. First time we ever showed him, like, hey, you're gonna need to put this board that we're about to manufacture for, you know, millions of consoles into something that looks good. He's like, what the f?
My office was where everybody brought their ideas, from the technology team to the design team to the management team.
At the time that we were building the original Xbox, there were no other consoles with a hard drive or an Ethernet port.
So how do we put something around this that vents heat, that survives a drop test, and looks cool?
You have to fit all of this, of course, into a box that's not going to be giant sitting in your living room.
It was a constant battle between the different groups. I went through thousands of different sketches, trying to jam it and shrink it in every way possible into a box.
I remember him saying, like, well, maybe we just gotta slim it down, like, you know, we'll just dress it in black.
Everything was very aggressive looking. The console itself was large. It was bulging on the top.
It looked like the engine cowling on a Dodge Hemi. It was the physical embodiment of power, like no other console has ever been designed like this.
It was quite a miracle to fit everything in that box. Looking back today, you say the thing is huge, but in comparison to the PC of the 90s, it was tiny.
It is a small miracle that we actually were able to pull this off. And it looked awesome.
The 2001 Consumer Electronics Show is packed with every new gadget and gizmo about to hit stores.
CES 2001 in Las Vegas, in the Convention Center Hall. Bill Gates was there.
CES will actually give us a better idea of just where Microsoft is going to fit into the gaming market.
For the very first time, Microsoft was going to get to show off its final Xbox hardware design.
Good morning. Welcome to CES.
Everybody felt like we were on the verge of doing something special, historic.
For the first time, let me now unveil Xbox.
But when you show up as the third entrant into the space with well-established competitors, you have to break out, you have to be bold.
How do you unveil a product in a way that might surprise the world and get the world to see Microsoft doing something differently?
If you smell what the rock is cooking.
The Rock says we decided to bring The Rock to CES.
There was honestly some disbelief, like, you know, Bill Gates, The Rock, like, what's going on here?
Thank you, Bill.
It was really like muscle-bound Hollywood meets, you know, gamer geek of the tech world.
Just might appear that The Rock and Bill Gates don't have a heck of a lot in common. Well, The Rock's here to say that can't be farther from the truth. The Xbox is everything The Rock is. Cutting edge, powerful, exhilarating.
And they were funny together. Like, it actually worked.
And they looked like they were best friends.
I mean, The Rock doesn't impress easily, Bill, you know that, but I'm pretty damn impressed with what we're seeing here today. And considering that this Xbox at this moment is only running on 1/5 of the system's power, it's very impressive. Bill, do you have any idea what The Rock would be like if he were only running on 1/5 of his power?
Well, I would think that...
It doesn't matter what you think, Bill. I'm sorry, Bill. It's just a force of habit. Rock apologizes.
It went well. We showed nothing, technically, but it started to build the excitement.
We gave it 5 out of 5 stars. We really like the Xbox a lot. You throw in an 8GB hard drive, a 10100 Ethernet adapter, and you basically have the most powerful system on the block. The Xbox is really slick.
With excitement building around the console, Microsoft was under tremendous pressure to build a portfolio of hit games before the Xbox launch.
By the time they had announced that they wanted to do Xbox to the time when we needed to launch was an incredibly short period of time. We didn't really have the luxury of saying, start building a game from ground up. That was almost impossible. What we were looking for were games that were partially in development, ports already in development. We went out and started to look for developers all over the world.
A barnstorming tour across North America, Europe, and ultimately Japan to create some sort of excitement around the console and convince game developers in particular that we could be successful.
All right, boys, let's roll.
One day we presented a new idea from a small game publisher that had come to us and said, hey, we want to dust off one of the 2D games that we had done for PC. We're going to really invest in it. We think it's going to be really exciting.
And these newly important executives in Xbox who would review all the pitches from publishers and developers, they said, I don't think that game is going to be able to make the transition from 2D to 3D.
They felt that it was complicated. They didn't really understand the user interface. They thought that it was based on a game that hadn't been all that successful. To my surprise, it was rejected.
And that game was called Grand Theft Auto 3.
It ended up selling 14.5 million units. It was the top-selling game of 2001 and would have been the top-selling game of 2002 if it wasn't beaten by its own sequel.
It was the pass heard around the industry. Despite seeing Grand Theft Auto 3 go to PlayStation, Microsoft was still well-positioned to attract other developers to its platform.
We needed a vibrant and strong third-party lineup of games that customers would love, and we wanted the industry to look at us as something that was going to be worthy of development. We wanted to have the very best games.
On March 13, 2001, Microsoft put their commitment to developers on public display at their GameStock event in Seattle.
Thanks and welcome to GameStock 2001. What you're seeing is a sneak peek at what's to come on Xbox. We're going to start off with a game whose vision was really just too big to fit in the PS2, so we brought it over to the Xbox.
Our characters certainly aren't the muscle-bound superheroes, you know, that we want to be. They're more like the poor, sad schmucks that most of us really are.
Getting Oddworld, that was important. It was an established PlayStation franchise, beloved by the console game community.
That's the last damn Gambit there is!
We had a chance to work with an amazing creator in Lorne Lanning. He did all the voice acting for his own game.
So Munch had these things we called fuzzles, and they were like, me, 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 and Munch would like, you got to come over and do this for me. You know, so and then Abe's like, come on, guys, let's go. And they were really vulnerable characters living in extremely dangerous worlds that you're trying to keep them alive, but when they get whacked, it's hilarious.
Next, we're really happy to announce our new relationship with one of the premier racing developer teams in the world, Bizarre Creations.
Project Gotham is a new product for Xbox. Now check out the reflections on this car. The whole environment is completely mapped to the entire surface of this vehicle.
Project Gotham Racing was based on your style of driving as much as how fast you cross the finish line.
For us, it was an opportunity to make this amazing, really accessible, fun, arcade racing game.
It's a really important part of our launch, and that was just the beginning.
Hardcore, freestyle, snowboarding. This is only one mountain of 7 international mountains we'll be bringing to you in AMP.
That double-ended axe is pretty wicked looking, and we can tell this is a hand-to-hand fighting game.
Playing a football game, you want to kick your buddy's butt so hard he's going to wear it for a helmet.
And that's it for our show today. I hope you got to see everything that you wanted. Did you see everything? Oh, I feel like I am forgetting something. What was it? Oh, Halo. Hey, how could I forget Halo?
Hey everybody, so I'm Jason. I'm one of the co-founders of Bungie and the lead on Halo.
Bungie was a Mac-first developer. That's where they started, that's where they'd had their success with Marathon and Myth 2.
But Bungie was also dealing with the aftermath of a catastrophe. Myth 2, one of their hottest titles, had an installer bug that could erase a user's entire hard drive. In order to fix the bug and keep the company above water and working on new games, they needed a serious cash infusion.
Apparently they had this thing called Halo. I hadn't seen it yet. Some of my guys had. They had multiple games into development, but all I wanted was this new thing that they were working on. So we did a deal and bought out the company, and they started to work on Halo.
That's really when true development began on what the game would be. When we were purchased, Halo was not a game. There was no real story. There was no real sense of what the gameplay tempo would be like. We knew it was powerful to control a space marine who moved fast and could jump into a sophisticated vehicle and, haul ass around this alien world. And that was it.
What do you think, Jason? See it?
People knew about Halo. They knew that we'd been acquired by Microsoft. They knew about Xbox. They knew we were still working on the game. That period of getting Halo from a series of prototypes to on a disc playable by an Xbox was just a mad rush to get this game done. But there was this excitement that we had something special.
It makes me very nervous to actually play this for you. Welcome to Halo on the Xbox.
We started off that demo showing you flying to the land in a Covenant ship, running around the environment, getting in a vehicle, doing all those, building block Halo things. We had our test environment, what we called a B30, the island map in the middle of the water with Halo in the background. It was just fun to play.
Woo!
GameStock was that real first coming out party for us, and it was just that moment where I think the whole organization began to wake up to, oh, there's something really special here.
Thank you, that's it. Good night.
Xbox had made a high-risk bet on Halo. At the time, first-person shooters were considered PC games. The only right way to play was with a keyboard and mouse.
At the time, people thought, well, how are you going to translate, mouse and keyboard game into a console game?
Dual-stick first-person shooters had almost never been done on a console.
I remember right before the demo, Ed was very clear. He's like, hey, when you're playing, make sure that people see the controller. What we need to demonstrate is you can play a shooter with thumbsticks, maneuvering around the environment.
You can go back and you can look. Adamant blog posts that shooter games, like Doom, would never work with a game controller.
Can people actually play a first-person shooter on a controller like this? Is the audience going to accept it?
While gamers wrestled with the idea of a first-person shooter on a console, critics also keyed in on a not-so-tiny issue.
I don't like the controller. Unfortunately, it's big. I think it's too big.
The Duke, they call it. The Duke wasn't a small controller. It didn't feel cheap. I felt like you could kill somebody with it.
You had to have gorilla hands to work with this thing. It was the industry's biggest game controller.
The Duke controller was like a newborn baby. I mean, the thing is like 9 pounds, 3 ounces. You had to kind of hug it.
As an adult with big hands, you can hold it farther back and it's really comfortable and cool.
It was done bass-ackward, as most things were on the original Xbox.
To get to that design, we kind of used the human factors ergonomic approach.
For those of us with smaller hands, we all thought, oh my God, did all these guys just sit in a room and go, oh yeah, this is gonna be great.
It was like, oh, yeah, this is totally not gonna work for us. And it was like, okay, this is a problem.
Perhaps we didn't take into account a full range of hand sizes.
There's no way we could ship Duke in Japan. People couldn't use it there. There was almost a plea, Carlson, you've got to find a way to make this smaller, please.
We knew it wasn't the right thing, but we didn't have enough time. E3 was coming up, and so we had to go with what we had.
On May 17, 2001, global gaming's biggest event, E3, kicked off in Los Angeles.
The E3 is clearly the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the World Cup all rolled into one for the video game industry.
For Team Xbox, it was the most important public test for their new console before a looming November launch date.
We're trying to make an impression at E3, and we don't know what hardware we're going to be able to show. And are we going to try to show a lot or a little? Should we show games at all?
We were heads down, focused on having all of our games prepped for E3, and it nearly killed us.
It's Broadway, it's opening night. You're going to read the reviews the next morning, and you're either hot or you're a flop.
I was pretty eager to get to E3 and get hands-on with the Xbox. But your first time making hardware is painful. And what you demo and what ends up on the store shelves are often very different things. And so I was really skeptical that this Xbox is going to be ready.
It's a pleasure for me to be the first to welcome you to Los Angeles for what I'm sure is going to be quite an exciting week.
So it's 8 a.m. in the morning. The hardware team is like literally using duct tape to get the box done. Sony had their event the night before and a party afterwards. This was going to be our coming out party, and we now have a hungover media group at 8 o'clock in the morning coming to see Xbox. That is not where you want to be.
We've made Xbox a reality. And you can see here, if I slide this down, Xbox itself. Now live and ready to go.
I walk out on stage and I do my first line.
And in fact, if I press this little button here on the front,
and then I, hit the magic button that's supposed to start the Xbox.
You'll see Xbox will actually start up. We can bring that video up. We can bring that video up.
And nothing happens. Nothing happened.
Well, if we could bring the video up, Xbox would be live and starting and running.
I didn't know what to do, so I just went on.
So it's with great confidence that on November the 8th, in the North American market, you'll be able to go into retail stores.
In less than a year's time, you're going to release this thing into the wild, and people are going to be able to play it, and you're going to love it. And it doesn't turn on.
It was a devastating moment.
As the hardware planner, my heart just sank.
And you'll be able to get a box just like this with Xbox in it.
It was a disaster.
A legendary sort of press conference snafu.
We had to convince the press very quickly that we had a box that worked, and we needed to get their hands on these games as quickly as we possibly could so we could wash away that moment that we had on stage.
We're very excited about that.
But the disasters kept rolling.
The Xbox wasn't done yet. The graphics hardware that they were running on was running about half the speed of what we expected the final product to be at. Basically, I'm making excuses for it was slow.
Microsoft had never had a meaningful presence at E3 before. The booth was packed.
We decided to show Halo because we feel like we have to show what's going to be our key title.
In terms of the games we were working on, Halo had the biggest role. And so it was the E3 demo on the floor.
So many people were coming in with huge curiosity about what it was capable of, and I was completely disappointed. I'm like, the frame rate's terrible, the split screen stuff, it's kind of cool, but it just doesn't feel like it's powerful enough.
On the show floor, the unfinished game seemed to fall short of its original promise of revolutionary gameplay.
So now you have a bad launch event, and the key title that's going to carry the day looks bad, and people start to think we're crazy. Shortly thereafter, E3, Peter Moore, he's at Sega, and he says, hey, I want to give you our feedback from E3.
That E3 was critical for Sega to stay alive.
In February of 2001, Sega made the decision to discontinue the Dreamcast and focus exclusively on software. Part of that transition included a huge bet to focus on making games for Xbox. But a disastrous showing at E3 from Microsoft meant danger for Sega.
As we were moving from being a first party to a classic third-party publisher, we absolutely needed somebody like a Microsoft to get us through this difficult period.
And so Peter comes up to me. He looks at me and says, well, here's our feedback. Retailers aren't going to stock you, developers aren't going to develop for you, and consumers think the product's not very good and it's too expensive. I took it very personally. I'm the leader of the team. It's my responsibility. It's my obligation. And I felt like I failed. This is my resignation letter to my boss, Rick Paluzzo. I wrote this on Friday, May 25th, 2001 at 2:02 a.m. It starts off, my status in Xbox, importance high. This is not going to be an easy email to write, and frankly, I've postponed doing it several times. The short summary is that my direct involvement in Xbox needs to end, and sooner than either of us would like. I think this is both in my best interest and the best interest of Microsoft.
But Bill Gates and Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer did not accept Robbie's resignation.
They just encouraged me to get it done and said, you've done a great job, keep at it, we're with you. I mean, there wasn't much more they could say, right? There's no advice they could give me. They were too far away to say, hey, go do this. The only person who could figure that out was me. I never told anybody on the team. Rick and Steve and Bill. They're the only people that ever knew. That gives you the sense how personally challenging it was for a person who hates losing.
Electronic Arts, it's one of the biggest game makers in the world, and its CEO, Larry Probst, was quoted in the Financial Times as saying this, that Microsoft has a lot to do over the next few months. They are on a death march now.
I don't think anybody had an easy ride to launch.
All we're thinking about is getting the device done so that we can make launch date. If you didn't have console units on retail shelves for a holiday, you missed a year. That holiday was vital.
There were a lot of late nights. We were trying to engineer and design something that we'd never done before.
We're building the technology, we're building the hardware inside.
The Xbox circuit board is about yay big. It had probably in the order of 800 parts.
Parts of the Xbox were coming from all over the world.
Like Hungary and Mexico.
You know, there were people who went and lived in China, in a hotel room, for weeks on end.
We would be flying back and forth with hard drives to get stuff back to test.
Microsoft had never shipped a console before. It turns out there's a lot of regulation everywhere in the world. You had to be certified by the right agency and approved.
Their approval took longer than we expected. Parts wound up getting delayed from suppliers.
It was every day, come into the office, see a fire, try to put the fire out.
We were tracking the hardware, tracking the components, tracking our launch dates at such an accelerated pace.
It was chaotic.
Chaos, total chaos.
People themselves were doing Herculean things.
We would sleep at the office.
This was all happening in real time.
It had just never been done before.
Xbox was the toughest job I will ever have, or have ever had. I will never do it again.
Every day was a challenge, both sort of technically and professionally, but also personally.
You know, you were lucky if you had a personal relationship that survived launch. Mine did not.
It's kind of like you're on this horse that's bucking and you're thinking, okay, is this ever gonna stop or will this be the end of me?
8 to 12 weeks before launch. We're coming in way hotter than anyone expected to.
We doubted whether the hardware was going to be done in time. We're not sure any of the games are going to be done in time. The ship is still on fire, the plane hasn't landed, all the metaphors for crashes you can think of. But in the end, that team believed.
There's no second try at the Xbox, so this was a Hail Mary culture. And if we were able to succeed, it was going to be absolutely epic.
It's a touchdown.
November 15th, 2001. Xbox was released in Times Square.
Mr. Bill Gates!
We painted Times Square green. Everywhere you looked, you saw the Xbox green logo.
Xbox was up on all these big billboards. One of those moments in your life you're never going to forget. Here we are, a huge line of gamers down the street waiting to buy this Xbox.
20 years old, first time going to the city alone. I get on a bus and I show up in Times Square. I go straight to the new Toys R Us and I'm looking for the line. I'm prepared to stay there all day.
We worked with the city to open up the WWF restaurant across the street from Toys R Us Times Square. And that's where all the gamers came first.
They have Xbox consoles set up everywhere. They pretty much just allowed all the gamers to hang out and play and test out all these games.
Bill wanted to be on site. He wanted to help hand over the first console.
Bill Gates is down at a gaming system, shook my hand and said, "You ready to play?" And then we were playing Fusion Frenzy, and Bill Gates made a comment that he had actually taken 2 weeks off of work just to practice this game. He wanted to beat the gamers.
Does anyone know what the shoot button is? Hey, I think. Hey? Let's check.
He couldn't beat me. I absolutely took pleasure in beating Bill Gates, yes.
Thank you for this. Been waiting a long time.
Everybody got a tag on their wrist, and when your color was called, we brought you across the street to Toys R Us, and Bill was there to hand out the very first Xbox.
Tonight's kind of a celebration. It's after a lot of hard work.
So they count down. Bill Gates has it rung in on the register. Price is up there, $299.99.
4, 3, 2.
One hits, and he hands me the box and says, "Don't worry, I'm buying it for you." And I turn around with even more excitement and raise my prized possession over my head.
Edward Glucksman became the first gamer in the world to ever own an Xbox. It was a magical night.
I'm a 20-year-old kid looking for a console. That's all I wanted to do. First time going to the city alone, I managed to get sent home in a limo.
It's a celebrity.
Every night.
That's right.
They actually did it. You know, Microsoft actually built and delivered this thing.
The feeling was like, crying level of exhaustion and intense pride for the thing that we had made.
There's never been a prouder moment in somebody's early career. I still have goosebumps today thinking about it.
I tell people that faith is a force multiplier. That team believed. And because that team believed, Xbox got done. If that team doesn't believe and they're just there doing their jobs, we never finish.
That small group of big personalities managed not only to convince Bill Gates and the board that we wanted to get into this nascent industry, but they also managed to get an entire organization of game people created and pointed in the right direction.
Go to the subway, the whole station is covered in Xbox logos. I had to sit down and started to cry, and even Kevin got emotional.
It was an impossible task that we should not have been able to do. I was tremendously proud of it. But at the same time, that was the end of that special moment in time that we were all able to be part of. It was the end of an era.
With the Xbox out of their hands and into living rooms around the world, Kevin Backus and Seamus Blackley left Microsoft for new adventures in the game industry.
Microsoft Xbox went on sale at midnight, but when it comes to video games, it's not the system that counts, it's the games.
Nobody actually really cares about the hardware. All they care about is the content.
To be successful, you have to give the gamers that platform-defining title. That you had to go out and buy an Xbox if you wanted to play.
Halo was like this gem, like this was going to be the diamond we offered up at Xbox launch.
But remember, Halo showed up at E3, 6 months before the game was supposed to launch with pretty serious frame rate issues.
Why is it running like internet video from the early 90s?
We got hammered for how it showed up on the floor.
This is our lead title. Are we gonna actually launch something that is this terrible game?
I think there was a bunch of panic. People didn't see what they expected.
That was the part where people actually got super worried.
There was an incredible amount of pressure on Halo. If Halo wasn't a hit, then the future of Xbox really was in doubt.
December 28, 1856.
We stand in the presence of an awakened nation. Plainly, it is a new age.
President Woodrow Wilson, who led the United States during World War I, is born in Virginia. Wilson tried, yet failed after the war to persuade the U.S. to join the League of Nations, the forerunner of the United Nations. Also born on this day, actor Denzel Washington. 1832, John C. Calhoun becomes the first vice president of the United States to resign. Calhoun steps down over his political differences with President Andrew Jackson. 1973, the first parts of Alexander Solzhenitsyn's work, Gulag Archipelago, an expose of the Soviet prison system, are published in Paris. Solzhenitsyn is later arrested and charged with treason in the Soviet Union for his work, then sent into exile. 1944. In New York, the musical On the Town with music by Leonard Bernstein opens on Broadway. And 1922, comic book creator Stan Lee is born in New York. Among his characters, Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four. Today in History, December 28th, Ross Simpson, The Associated Press.
Growing up as a photographer shooting surfing in California, you know, who wouldn't have known who Tom Curran is? So I always knew Tom, you know, but then because he kind of became this elusive, you know, kind of guy that moved to France and, you know, he was off the radar. I mean, I don't think anybody got to see him free surf much. There's very limited film of Tom free surfing. The Tom Curran connection with making the first search film was almost like paved in just knowing each other since young. Now, it wasn't something like the thing about probably that first movie and all the movies we made, they just occurred. We kind of made these movies on a lot of investment of time. The real journey was to go to Africa, and that really the whole Africa idea, I think, was, you know, really brainchild by Derek Hine, because he had this affection with JBay. He knew what a phenomenal point wave it was. He knew that Tom was the master of the right-hand point. We went there for over a month. We stayed in Africa. So, there was one of those swells radared. We got there, I think, a couple days before. Tom was flying in, like, on the moment. We all knew that Tom was coming. And so we were like, it was down there, like, get your cameras greased and make sure they're working because the guy's gonna arrive and the waves are pumping. Like, it was, the day before was good, but it wasn't as good as, like, the afternoon he showed up. We rolled on somebody just surfing to make sure it actually could shoot a surfing wave. Like, some goofy footer dropped in and just did a bottom turn and kicked out, and we rolled on that, said, okay, it's rolling, and it was the next wave was Tom's first wave, a JBay paddling out. Paddled out, took off on his first wave, and rode it flawlessly on a board he'd never ridden. It takes a certain person surfing to flawlessly ride that wave. Tom's surfing is so flawless with his style that all that speed, power, flow, his bottom turn, all that stuff was just like through the roof on one ride. First day he's ever surfed JBay. I don't think at the time that I quite felt like that was a turning point in surfing because of not being able to watch it back. So all those kind of moments that we captured without the digital age and the simple age of recording by hitting a red button, it's like a miracle that the moments that mattered actually got caught on the 2 or 3 minutes of movie film per roll. No one had ever seen a display of Tom Curren's free surfing until that turning point of the search and 5 years of exploration.
Sometimes you just feel like you don't belong. If you did before, not anymore, but nothing's wrong. It's just how life moves on. I found my way back again, but then it might be all gone. Another story you can put into a song. Oh, try to put the road still on, just rolling through the motions. Just rolling through the motions.
sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
The number you have dialed has been changed.
Best place to find a lover, so the bar is where I go. Me and my friends sat at the table doing shots, drinking fast, and then we talk slow. And you come over and start up a conversation with just me, and trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop, find the man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Say, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. Oh, I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room. And now my bedsheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. Oh, I'm in love with your body. Sing it out for me, y'all. I'm in love with your body.
Welcome back in our studio, and in today's news,